Over 10,000 Americans are retiring every day, and most of them are screwing up their land purchases. Why? Because they're buying based on emotion. And then once they bought the land, they get crushed by issues with terrain, issues with restrictions, issue with zoning regulations, or with infrastructure nightmares. But when you think like a builder and not like a dreamer, you can actually set yourself up for retirement and not have to worry about any of these issues. This video is about the blueprint that most smart land buyers use, and honestly, most realtors have no clue what I'm about to tell you. If you've ever said to yourself, I need to slow down a little bit as I get towards retirement, I want a little bit of peace and quiet, I want some elbow room, this video is going to be for you. We're going to go deep on how to buy land with that end goal of having something that once you do retire, it's exactly what you want in place. And I'm not going to go over fluff. We're going to go deep on this. We're going to talk about the real strategy that protects not only your wallet, but also that freedom as you move forward to that next phase of life. We're going to talk about how that vision you've got in your head is actually going to translate and how you can make that dream become a reality basically anywhere in the U.S. The first thing we're going to talk about is the one that is screwed up most often. People start shopping for land before they even know what they're going to do. I see it all the time. People are like, oh, I want to buy land. I want to have a cabin on land. And they go and they get on Zillow and Realtor.com and they start looking for land, and they're looking at all these different states, and they don't really have an idea of what the purpose of that land is going to be. That's what you've got to start with. What does that end goal look like? Is this something that you want to be off-grid? Because that's going to change things immensely if you want off-grid versus you want to be hooked into utilities. Do you want to grow your own vegetables? Do you want cattle? Okay, you're going to be looking in completely different areas if that's something that you want versus something that you just want to get away from everybody. Do you want to be available for friends and family to come over and visit you? Do you want to host people a lot? And then the other part, and this kind of gets into pricing and how you're going to pay for it, is this something that you're going to want to rent out part-time, or are you going to stay there basically the entire year? And one of the things that people like us have a real issue with, and you can ask my wife on this, we underestimate exactly how long it's going to convert that raw land into what we want as that end vision. What we don't want is something, I've seen it happen here in the Texas Hill Country where you pick up 10 acres for $150,000 or $200,000, but once you get a builder out there and an architect, you start looking and the terrain's wrong. It's going to be way more expensive to build than what you wanted. You can't run cattle on it because it all looks like it does behind me, which is very little grass. So in 10 acres, you might be able to put a donkey. We don't want you to get to the point where you've already purchased land and then you can't use it the way that you want it to. So we need to be crystal clear on what that goal is from the beginning. Do you want solitude? Do you want to be self-sufficient? Do you want a legacy property that you can pass down to your kids and grandkids and maybe even great-grandkids someday? Because if you're not clear about that end goal, every property that you see looks like a deal and looks like something that you're going to fall in love with. And that's where the danger starts to creep in. The second thing you've got to do is you've got to understand what land costs look like and what build costs look like from region to region. I say it all the time in my videos. If you're working in Texas and you want to buy land in Texas, reach out to me. I can help you directly. If you're looking in any other state, reach out to me still. I've got a lot of people, builders and contractors and realtors and lenders and all these people in all these other states, and I could probably help you get started if you don't have local assets on the ground already. Because the biggest thing about land, and at this point I understand it, it's not what that land costs up front. It's what is it going to take to get it from where it is to what your dream looks like. And every piece of land in every state and every region of every state is different. So again, you've got to have those local assets on the ground. Here in Central Texas, as an example, I can show you land that's $5,000 an acre, and I can take you and show you land $30,000 or $40,000 an acre. Completely different terrain, completely different locations, but all within Central Texas. Some of my other videos I talk about it. If you're looking maybe Arkansas, Mississippi area, you might be able to find land for $3,000 to $5,000 an acre. If you're looking kind of through the mountain west, you're looking at $5,000 to $15,000 an acre, and if it's got massive views and water rights in Colorado, $20,000 an acre there isn't out of the question either. And then if you're talking about building costs, I've seen anywhere from $150 a square foot up to about $500 a square foot, depending on where you're building, what that terrain looks like, and what your utility situation looks like. Not to mention, if that terrain gets really crazy and you've got to do some type of foundation that's not normal for the area, that can spike that building cost even higher. And we haven't even started talking about wells, rainwater collection system, things like that. Here in Central Texas, again, wells can range anywhere from $15,000 to about $30,000, depending on how deep you want to go and depending on how much water you want to get out of the ground. And driveways, depending on what you're going to use to create your driveway, can be anywhere from about $1 a square foot to about $20 a square foot. You can have gravel, you can have concrete, and you can have a bunch of things in between. And even with concrete, there's different grades of it, and there's different ways you can finish it. So again, what we're talking about here isn't just the land cost. cost, okay? I can put a number on it, $4,000 an acre, $5,000 an acre. But depending, again, on what that finished product looks like in your mind, you could go from something that you think is within your grasp to now I've got the land and I'm starting to price this stuff out, and all of a sudden you realize, oh, holy crap, I just wasted all of my money on this land, and I don't know if I'll be able to get any of it back. Third thing I want to touch on briefly is zoning regulations and potential legal restrictions on property. You always want to know, even before you go under contract if possible, what does the future look like for that property? Are there any zoning overlays that are on it that are going to restrict what you can do? Can you find any zoning maps on it? Are there deed restrictions that the owner or that the realtor that's selling it is willing to share with you? The other thing is, what about future use for the area around it? I mean, if you're within 5 or 10 miles of a city, there could be a future use planned that could directly impact exactly what you want to use it for. I mean, I can't think of anything worse than buying 10 or 15 acres and having an amazing view, and then in 3 years somebody putting in an industrial complex next door because that's what the city had planned for that area. And again, this is where that local knowledge becomes really important. Think about, again, in Texas, there's not a whole lot of oversight on things that you can and can't do. I mean, outside of what it's going to take to put your well in, put your septic in, the further you get out away from city areas, you're going to have less oversight. The county may have some things that you can and can't do, and again, TCEQ for water and wastewater. But the thing that can often trip people up because they come into Texas and they go, oh man, I'm in Texas, I can do whatever I want, is they don't actually look at the deed restrictions, because our land is not in these giant blocks anymore. It's been subdivided over and over. And a lot of times, if the original landowner is still next door, they may restrict your property against things that they don't want to see happen next to their house. They may not even let you put in a modular home. They may require stick built. They may not allow your home to be taller than 25 or 30 feet. So again, you've got to get these things up front. You've got to understand what is allowed on that land. And there's a lot of other states that are more restrictive than what Texas is. So again, and I go back to this, it's going to sound like a broken record, make sure you have local representation, people that can take care of you so you don't get in trouble when you're trying to buy in a place that you're not familiar with. And again, if your goal is to be self-sufficient in the next part of your life and you want chickens and cows and you want to put in gardens and maybe have some pigs and stuff like that, but there's deed restrictions that say you can't do that, again, you're going to waste a lot of money trying to find that out if you don't realize it up front. All right, next major thing here is hidden costs. And a lot of times people don't really know how to calculate infrastructure costs. Case in point, I've got a client with land here in Texas, and there's a power line that's running right down the middle of the property. Okay, it's not ideal for what they want to do. They would like to move it to one of the boundaries. Now, we contacted the power company and they said, sure, we'll move it for you. It's just going to cost you about $80,000. That's a big number. That's a lot different than connecting to power and having that cost you $5,000 or $10,000 to put in a pole. $80,000 can ruin a budget real fast. What are the other things you're going to need for infrastructure? Okay, we talked about it earlier. You're probably going to need a driveway. What kind of driveway do you want? How long is it? Me personally, I screwed this up. I've got a great view on my lot, but the view is at the back of the lot. So I had to put a driveway in all the way to the back. It's 1,100 square feet. Every time I want to top dress my driveway just with gravel and make it smooth again, it's $4,000. So I'm stuck right now trying to figure out, okay, what am I going to do to make that driveway last long? Because it's on a slope, and every time it rains, no matter how well that driveway is packed, I lose a little bit of the driveway every time, every year. And so over time, it's going to get rutted out. So now I'm trying to figure out, am I going to spend $10,000? Am I going to spend $30,000? What am I going to do? What's my final solution and the best solution to get that driveway taken care of? The next thing we always talk about is water. What are you going to do for water? Do you have municipal water available? In other words, is there a pipe over there that you can tap into? Are you going to have to dig a well? Again, speaking locally, you may have to go 800 feet down to find water. That's an expensive hole in the ground. We're talking $25,000, $30,000, maybe $35,000 depending on where you are. Personally, I've got rainwater collection, but some states won't let you collect rainwater for, whole house use. Kind of silly to me, especially in a place like Colorado, but the whole state, the state of Colorado, owns everything that falls out of the sky. That's the way their bylaws or whatever their laws are written. So you have to get special permission to catch rainwater off of your roof and hold it so that you can have drinking water. And then we get to wastewater. Sure, you could have a composting toilet, something like that. Not really elegant, but it's a solution. Outside of that, the only other solution you've got sometimes, if you're not close enough to a municipal area, is you're going to put in a septic system. Okay, great. Everybody can deal with the septic system, right? Well, not all land can carry a septic system. You have to have tests that test the ground to see if it'll actually absorb that effluent and if it'll hold it in a manner that the state is happy with. There are parts of the state of Texas that you cannot put a septic system in. Doesn't matter. If you bought that land planning to put a house there and your goal for wastewater was a septic tank, you have to find another solution or else you're going to sell the land. Oh, and by the way, now that you know that it won't hold, that the PERC test doesn't work for the wastewater solution for the septic system, now you have to disclose that to the next buyer. Just because you didn't find out before you bought it, you're the one that gets screwed. When you go to sell it to the next buyer, you have to disclose that. Again, that's a heck of a way to lose a lot of money. What I've got for this is a checklist that I use with my buyers, and we go through when we identify a piece of property, and the checklist changes a little bit, but it's got some basic commonalities. But based on their end use, we check off and give it a number of 1 through 5. Is electric easily available? 1 through 5. Is water easily available? 1 through 5. And we go down this checklist, and my client then can total that up and figure out if that is worth pursuing. If the checklist is something that you want, let me know. I'm more than happy to give it to you. But if you can come up with your own checklist based on, again, going back to that first point, going back to the purpose of that land, come up with your own checklist and analyze every piece of property that you've got against that checklist. Mine personally, there's 10 points, there's 5 points apiece. I can judge everything out of 50. I know that if I'm 45 or more, that's an A property. Okay, that's something that may be worth looking at. If I'm down around 20 out of 50 or even 30 out of 50, that's a failing property. I don't know that I want to pursue that. And that scorecard has to be specific to your purpose. Okay, at this point, we're thinking like a systems engineer. All right, we need to check all of these boxes to make sure that what you want with that property can be done. So the things you want to look at, okay, we have to talk about soil quality. But again, for your purpose, is that for planting crops? Is that for having cattle? Or is that for the ability to absorb effluent and put in a septic system? Access, are there deeded access points? Deeded is really, really important, guys. It has to be filed with the county or whatever the governing agency is for that area. If there's just a road, that doesn't necessarily mean that you have access. That means that there's a road. If it's not deeded access, if it's not legal access, your neighbor that road runs through their property, they could potentially close that off, and now you've got a landlocked piece of property. Kind of hard to get to a landlocked piece of property unless you've got a helicopter. The other things I've got on mine are utilities. Is there any zoning overlays? And again, going back to, are there deed restrictions? One of the other things that I have on mine is there a current survey? And I always say, even if the survey is a year old, I always ask my buyers to get their own survey, pay the money, get your own survey, because you never know if somebody missed something on the old survey. And if you get your own, at least you have the recourse of going back to the survey company if something is wrong and taking up matters with them. If you accept a survey from a seller, then at that point, you can't go back to that survey company and say, hey, you screwed this up, make it right. And then, like I said, make sure that this is a weighted system. Mine, again, is 1 to 5. I've got 10 questions normally, and I can figure out of 50 points, whatever that is. You may want to do 1 to 10. You may want to do 1 to 3, and you may have 15 or 20 points. But have something that's systematized and something that's repeatable for you so that as you're analyzing all of your property, you can figure out which ones are the best solutions. Because at the end of the day, it's not just about liking the land. I mean, I like almost every piece of property that I step foot on. It's about making sure that you can prove that your plan can be put into place on that land that you're buying. And I'll go back to this one more time. Make sure that you have local resources in place. That's what I'm for. If you're in Texas, reach out to me. If you're looking in another state, reach out to me also. I've got people that I can refer you to in all other states. Because at this point in your life, what you're looking at is a forever move. Even if it's not going to be full time, this is going to be a forever move decision for you. You've got to have something more and something better than just jotted down notes on the back of a napkin.